The night you have arrived in is gentle and orderly, the kind of night that feels like a well-folded blanket. Above your roof, above every roof, the sky holds its familiar arrangement. Stars keep their places without any hurry. The moon, if it is there at all, moves with a patience that asks nothing from you. And down here, on Earth, the smallest sounds soften. A distant car fading into silence, the sigh of a fan, the breath you didn't realize you were holding until it loosens on its own. So tonight, let that consistency hold you. Let it cradle the mind that has worked all day, turning tasks over and over like stones in a pocket. Let it reassure the part of you that worries something will be missed, something will slip. The seasons have been arriving for longer than any calendar can count. The dawn keeps finding the horizon. Somewhere in the dark, an owl turns its head and listens, and the world continues to be itself. And yet in the old stories, the universe is not only consistent, it is maintained. There is a comforting thought hidden inside that idea, that behind the calm repetition of night and day, there are caretakers, not dramatic heroes, not loud conquerors, just watchers, patient, methodical, devoted to the gentle work of keeping things from unraveling. If you have ever wished, in a tired moment, that someone else could take your shift for a while, the ancient world once imagined the sky itself held beings who felt the same wish. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story. Here you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Now, make yourself more comfortable. Some listeners find it helps to picture a small light behind the ribs, a calm ember that brightens when you inhale and softens when you exhale. You don't have to force it. Just notice the quiet warmth of being here, safe in this moment, while the story holds the rest. Let the bed support you, and let time slow like falling snow. If you can, let your shoulders drop just a fraction. Let the jaw unclench. Let the tongue rest where it wants to rest. Take a slow inhale as if you are drawing in the cool air of a night garden, and then let it go, long and unforced. There is nowhere you need to be for a while. There is nothing you need to solve tonight. Only a story moving like water. In ancient Mesopotamia, between the rivers Tigris and Euphrates, people watched the sky with a reverence that was both scientific and devotional. They tracked the stars not only to mark time, but to understand how order holds. And when they told stories about the gods, they told them like planners tell stories, with roles, with responsibilities, with careful assignments, not a chaos of divine moods, but a kind of cosmic schedule. They imagined two great layers of divinity, two ways of being responsible. There were the Anunnaki, names that sound like stone steps in a temple corridor, gods close to earth, close to harvest and flood, close to the underworld and the tangible needs of mortals. Their world was the world you can touch, clay and grain, river water and wind over reeds. And above them, like a higher shelf, there were the sky gods, often called the Igigi in later retellings, beings associated with the heights, the constellations, the wide quiet between the earth and the farthest lights. Their realm was the invisible machinery of balance, the slow turning of the heavens, the timing of seasons, the steadiness of boundaries between order and the old, dark possibility of chaos. You do not need to memorize the names. Let them be like distant bells. What matters is the feeling, a universe imagined as a system, and the system imagined as something tended. Now picture a small archive, cool and dim. Oil lamps burn low. The air smells faintly of dust and mineral earth. Shelves are lined with clay tablets, warm in the hand at first, then cooling like a stone that remembers the sun. Each tablet is inscribed with wedge-shaped marks pressed patiently into soft clay and then baked into permanence. In that room, history does not shout. It waits. Tonight, you and I take down one tablet gently. It is heavier than it looks, and the weight feels grounding. You can imagine the scribe who made it leaning close, making each mark with calm precision. The story pressed into the clay is old, and still it carries a quiet pulse. It says, softly, as if embarrassed to admit it, that the first great refusal, the first no, was not human. In the beginning, the cosmos had work to do. Work that did not finish. Work that did not rest. The Sky Watchers, the ones stationed between realms, were assigned the task of keeping everything running. The old texts speak of maintenance the way modern life does, adjusting, repairing, preventing collapse, keeping the channels clear so the flow can continue. The universe, in this imagining, is like irrigation. Water must be guided. Left alone, it will flood or vanish. Guided with care, it becomes life. Imagine the rivers at dusk. The sun is low and the water carries a ribbon of light. Banks of reeds whisper as the wind passes. Mud holds the day's warmth and the air begins to cool. Here by the water, it is simple, flowing, reflecting, breathing. Now let that image expand into myth. The Watchers dig channels, not with loud clamor, but with patient repetition. They lift earth and set it aside. They smooth the banks. They guide water into paths that will feed fields, fill basins, steady flood seasons. The work is described as long, so long it becomes more a feeling than a number. Cycles repeat until the mind stops counting and simply notices the rhythm. And there is a number that appears like a gentle drum beat. 600. 600 watchers. 600 lights assigned. 600 presences counted, not to reduce them, but to give the cosmos a shape. The number itself feels complete, meaningful in a counting system that loved circles within circles. You can hear it as a slow tally in the dark. 6, 10, 60, 600. And the mind relaxes because the counting has an end. In the tablet's marks, there is a strange familiarity. Units, groupings, shifts, duties divided like night into watches. Even the divine in these old imaginations had schedules. Even the sky had a kind of roster, though the payment was not gold but the steadying of the world. And that steadying over time began to feel like burden. Try just for a moment to sense what endless responsibility does. Not responsibility that ends with a task completed, but responsibility that repeats. The canal is dug, then silt returns. The channel is cleared, then storms shift the banks. The stars are guided, then their paths must be checked again. A job with no finish line. A vigilance that never receives applause. If you have known that feeling, if you have ever cared for someone, held a demanding job, carried an anxious vigilance that won't let the mind uncoil, then you can understand why the old stories gave their watchers a fatigue that feels achingly human. There is a line preserved in later retellings, short and breathlike, as if spoken after a long shift. The toil is too great, the distress too much. Listen to how it lands. Not as a threat, not as a war cry. More like a confession said into the dark. And if the universe requires constant maintenance, what is the moment of maintenance of itself? Let that question float for a while, like a leaf on slow water. You don't need to answer it tonight. Questions can be companions. They can sit beside you and keep you company without demanding anything. The watchers, those imagined caretakers, reached a point where even their patience could not stretch any further. And because this is a story made for sleep, We will not follow them into noise or violence. We will follow them into something quieter, a collective pause, a decision made in stillness. Picture it like this. The night sky looks the same as always, but somewhere between the layers of darkness, one small function stops. One small hand that has been holding a gear steps away. Not to break the mechanism, only to rest it. And because the universe has been held by so many hands for so long, that rest is felt like a change in air pressure, like a gentle shift in the way silence sits. Down on Earth, a priest in a temple courtyard notices the stars seem sharper or perhaps more distant. A scribe pauses over his clay, listening to the wind. By the river, a worker looks up from the water and feels, without knowing why, that something enormous is taking a slow breath. In your room, your own breath steadies too. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. In a moment, we will step closer to the rivers themselves. We will walk the banks where water learned to go the right way, and we will listen to the oldest white noise on earth, the hush of flow, the soft percussion of ripples against mud. We will let the ancient canal become a pathway for your thoughts to slow down, to spread out, to settle. But first, in this final quiet beat of our opening, notice the sky again. If you imagine 600 watchers as 600 points of light, you might feel them as a wide, gentle presence, an invisible night shift that has been keeping the world steady so you can finally stop working. And tonight, one faint signal begins to appear among them. Not a flare, not an alarm, just a subtle, distant glow, like a lantern raised far away, asking, without urgency, to be seen. The lantern you imagined, raised somewhere far above, asking softly to be seen, does not hurry you. It simply glows. And in the old stories, that is how messages often arrived, not as thunder, but as a change in tone, a slight shift in the night's texture, the way air feels before rain. So we follow the glow slowly. Not upward at first, but inward, toward the place where humans once kept their own version of the sky, a record of order pressed into clay. Picture a temple complex in southern Mesopotamia long ago when the rivers were wider and the nights carried more stars than streetlights. The walls are mud brick, sun-baked and pale. Courtyards open to the sky. In the evening, after heat releases from stone and plaster, there is a coolness that seems to rise from the ground itself, like a calm exhale. You walk through a corridor where footsteps sound gentle and round. Somewhere, a small flame trembles in an oil lamp. The light is amber, soft at the edges, and it gathers on surfaces the way honey gathers on a spoon. Dust floats in it, slow and unbothered, as if even the smallest particles have learned the art of drifting. At the end of the corridor is a door, wood darkened by years and hands. When it opens, the air changes, cooler, drier, the smell of clay and time. This is the archive. Inside, shelves hold tablets stacked like quiet loaves. Some are no bigger than a palm, some are heavy, broad, and thick. Each one carries the same patient language, wedges and lines pressed into wet earth and then baked so the story can outlive the storyteller. In a world where paper did not yet exist as we know it, this was how memory became durable, by becoming stone-like. You reach for a tablet and feel its cool weight. It steadies the hand, it steadies the mind. The texture is faintly grainy, as if it remembers river silt. When you tilt it toward the lamp, the marks catch light and shadow, and suddenly the writing looks like tiny hills at dusk. The scribe who made it would have sat close, breathing slowly, shaping each sign with a reed stylus. No rush, no drama, just a steady commitment to clarity, to order, to keeping the world from forgetting itself. In these records, the cosmos is not far away. It is intimate. It is organized. It has departments, so to speak, responsibilities divided among divine figures, the way human labor is divided among fields, canals, kitchens, and courts. One set of beings attends to what is visible: harvest cycles, water levels, births, deaths, boundaries between village and wilderness. Another set attends to what is invisible: the timing of stars, the balance of seasons, the subtle mathematics of the sky. The names shift between tablets and cities, but the feeling remains. There are watchers above, and there are workers below, and the world continues because someone remembers to tend it. And here, again, the number returns like a gentle refrain: 600. In the base 60 counting of Mesopotamia, numbers feel like circles, like wheels turning smoothly. 600 is not merely a quantity, it is a sense of completion, many hands, many eyes, many quiet presences arranged into a system that can hold. If you are tired tonight, imagine the comfort of that the world is not balanced on one exhausted pair of shoulders, it is shared. The tablet tells of the Igigi, those sky watchers assigned to long labor. Not a single heroic task, but the kind of work that repeats. The kind of work that becomes so familiar it turns into background sound, like water moving in a channel. And when the story begins to lean toward rivers, it does so with tenderness. Because rivers, in Mesopotamia, were both threat and gift. They brought life, but they also demanded attention. They flooded, they shifted, they scattered silt. They were like emotions, nourishing when guided, overwhelming when ignored. So the people learned to guide them, not with rigid force, but with patience. Banks built and repaired, channels cleared, gates adjusted. Over seasons and centuries, water learned pathways. It learned where to go when spring came and where to slow when summer arrived. A landscape of mud and reed became a landscape of fields and gardens. In the story, this guidance is mirrored above. The heavens, too, are a kind of flow. Stars follow routes. Constellations rise and set like reliable visitors. The moon keeps a schedule, and the watchers, those careful, unseen caretakers, stand between movement and meaning, making sure the roots remain true. Now let the archive fade gently behind us. We step out into night air. The courtyard is quiet. Somewhere a dog sleeps with its paws tucked under its chest. The temple's highest wall holds a strip of sky like a dark ribbon. You tilt your head and see stars, steady and numerous, each one a small promise that nothing is collapsing in this moment. We begin to walk. The path leads away from the temple, toward the river plain. The ground is firm, packed by many feet. As you move, the night seems to widen. The city noises, if there are any, fall away. What remains is wind, soft as cloth, and the distant, consistent sound of water. When you reach the canal, it is calmer than a river. It has edges. It has intention. It feels like a thought that has finally found the right words. Moonlight lies on the surface in broken pieces, as if someone scattered silver petals. The water moves without haste. It slides around bends. It touches the banks with a gentle, repetitive kiss. If you listen long enough, you can hear the canal as a kind of ancient music, not melody, but rhythm, steady even, soothing. This is the oldest white noise. Stand here and let it reach you. If you like, you can match your breathing to that rhythm. Inhale as the water slides forward. Exhale as it settles against the bank. There is no need to be perfect. The canal is not perfect either. It accepts fallen leaves. It accepts drifting petals. It accepts the small silts of ordinary days, and it keeps going. On the far side, date palms stand like quiet guardians. Their fronds move with the breeze, making a soft brushing sound, almost like pages being turned in a book. Somewhere, A night bird calls once, then becomes silent again, as if it remembered that silence is part of the story. You pass a low bridge made of packed earth and timbers. Beneath it, the water narrows and quickens, then widens and slows. The change is gentle, like a person adjusting a blanket without waking someone they love. The lantern light from the temple, far behind you now, looks like a star that decided to visit the ground, and as you walk, you begin to understand why the ancients linked canals to the sky. Both are paths, both are promises, both require care, not because they are fragile, but because life is a continuous process of returning things to balance. Maybe that is what maintenance truly is, not fixing what is broken, but honoring what is living, again and again, gently. If your mind has been busy today, let the canal do what it has always done, carry the extra away. Along the bank, you see the simple work of maintenance, a place where reeds were trimmed so water can pass, a small pile of silt removed by hand, a stone placed to steady an edge. The labor is humble, but it is also sacred in its own way because it keeps life possible. And now the story returns to the Igigi. For a long time, so long that time becomes fog, they did their work, they kept watch, they adjusted the invisible, they tended the boundaries between order and the vast unknown. 3,600 years, the texts sometimes say, a number that is less about arithmetic than about feeling. Imagine saying it slowly. 3,600. Like a long breath that takes many steps. It tells you this was not a short season of effort. This was endurance, and endurance, even when noble, has a cost. There is a quiet moment described in later retellings, and it feels almost modern. A collective fatigue, a shared realization that even the most loyal watchers have limits. They do not shout, they do not storm. Instead, they gather their exhaustion like a blanket and lay it down. The toil is too great, they say, and the words are not sharp. They are simply true. The distress too much. If you have ever whispered, in a bathroom mirror, or a dark car, or a silent kitchen, something similar, then you understand the tenderness of that confession. Naming tiredness is not rebellion. Sometimes it is care. Now the canal beside you continues to move, steady and calm. The moon continues to hold its place, and somewhere, high above this river plain, the faint lantern glow returns. Those distant points of light that seem to signal not danger, but a request. A request for rest. As you walk along the canal, you notice how the water reflects the sky. Stars tremble on the surface, elongated by ripples then reforming when the water smooths again. It is as if the heavens are practicing being held gently, learning how to soften without losing their shape. You may feel in that reflection a small lesson meant for you. Order does not have to be rigid. Consistency does not have to be harsh. Even the canal, guided and purposeful, still allows water to be water. In a moment we will come to the place where the watcher's pause becomes visible, where the sky's quiet maintenance falters, just enough for someone on earth to notice. Not with fear, but with wonder. A subtle misalignment, like a song played one note lower, inviting listening. And there, at the edge of the canal, a distant light will appear again. Not a blaze, not a threat, just a patient ember raised in the dark, asking the world to slow down and pay attention. The canal continues beside you like a calm companion, never asking you to speak, only offering its steady sound. Water slides forward, then folds into itself at each bend, as if the world is practicing how to let go without losing its shape. The palms on the far bank, sway in slow agreement. Even the insects seem to keep their voices low, as if they understand this is a night for listening. You walk a little farther and the path grows softer underfoot. The ground holds a day's warmth, but it is fading now, drifting upward into the air like a quiet thought. Above you, the stars keep their familiar spacing. They do not blink with urgency. They simply exist, each point of light like a small, dependable promise. And still, somewhere among them, there is that subtle difference, something you cannot name, only feel. Like the moment you realize you have been clenching your hands, and then you notice the relief when the fingers uncurl. In the old stories, this is how change begins. Not as a crash, but as a pause. If you imagine the Igigi, those watchers, stationed between heaven and earth, you might picture them not as towering figures, but as patient presences, like a lighthouse beam that keeps turning, or a night nurse checking on sleeping rooms, making sure every breath continues without trouble. Their labor is not dramatic, it is continuous. It is the kind of responsibility that becomes invisible precisely because it is so reliable. For so long, their maintenance blended into the background of existence. They kept the calendar of the sky. They steadied the timing of rising and setting. They listened for any soft fray at the edges of order, the way you might listen for a loose thread on a favorite sweater. They smoothed, adjusted, restored. And each time something was brought back into balance, the world simply went on, grateful without knowing why. Down here, along the canal, humans do similar work. A person wakes before dawn to clear a narrow gate where reeds have tangled. Another walks the bank at noon, watching for leaks, placing stones where mud has softened. A child learns where the water likes to pool and where it prefers to run. None of it makes songs, none of it earns monuments. Yet without it, the fields would dry, the gardens would fade, the villages would become dust. Maintenance is a quiet kind of love. Tonight, you can let that idea settle in your chest, that the most life-giving things are often the least noisy, that the strongest forms of care do not announce themselves, they repeat, they return, they keep going, and still, repetition has a weight. The canal doesn't complain, but you can imagine the hands that built it, season after season. The Igigi didn't complain either, until the day their silence became a message. The story says that after a very long time, so long it becomes a mist in the mind, the watchers reached the edge of their endurance. Some tablets speak in numbers, other retellings speak in feeling. Either way, the meaning is the same. The work had gone on long enough that even the stars seemed tired of being held. There is a line, short and human, that returns like a sigh. The toil is too great, the distress too much. Let it be a soft mirror for you if you need it. If today asked too much, if the week has been heavy, if your mind has been on duty, even when your body tried to rest, then you are not alone in that experience, even in myth, even in the imagination of a world that wanted to believe in perfect order. Someone eventually whispered, kindly and truthfully, I can't do this without rest. You and I keep walking, and the canal widens into a quiet basin where the water slows. The surface becomes smoother, and the stars reflect more clearly. It is like looking into a second sky, one you can almost touch. Stay here a moment, as if your thoughts are small boats. Let each inhale lift them. Let each exhale set them down. Notice the shoulders falling, the eyelids growing warm and heavy. The canal asks nothing, yet it offers the same lesson again and again. Flow can be guided and still remain gentle. If a worry returns, picture it dissolving like salt in dark water into the night completely. On the bank, You notice a small shrine stone worn by hands, a place where someone once left a bowl of water or a handful of dates as thanks for the river's mercy. The offering is not there now, but the gesture remains in the shape of the stone itself. Gratitude made physical. Farther on, you see a figure in the distance. Not close enough to startle you, not near enough to demand attention. Just someone moving slowly with a lamp, the flame sheltered in their palm. They walk along the bank as if counting, as if checking that everything is as it should be. Their steps are careful, their shoulders are relaxed, their presence is soothing in the way a quiet neighbor's porch light can be soothing, proof that the world is inhabited by gentle watchfulness. When the figure reaches the edge of the basin, they stop and tilt their head upward. They are listening to the sky. This is how the story gives us a bridge between realms. A human who notices the faintest difference. Not because they are anxious, but because they are practiced. A watcher in their own small way. He is an older scribe, the kind who has spent years in the archive, reading tablets by lamplight until the marks became familiar as friends. His name does not matter. Tonight, let him be simply the scribe, a calm presence you can trust. He has ink under his nails and clay dust on his sleeves. When he breathes, it is slow, as if he has learned that rushing makes nothing clearer. The scribe watches the stars and he notices something subtle. A constellation rises a breath later than it did yesterday. A familiar star seems to hold its position for an extra heartbeat before moving on. It is not alarming, it is almost tender, like the universe hesitating, as if it too is considering a rest. He lifts his lamp slightly, as if light might help him see the dark. Then he lowers it again, remembering that darkness has its own clarity. He turns back toward the temple. The corridor to the archive is cool and welcoming. Inside, the oil lamps glow low, the shelves wait, the clay tablets rest like sleeping animals, each one holding a fragment of memory. The scribe chooses one tablet carefully, sliding it from its place with respect. He carries it to a small table and sets it down with a sound that is more felt than heard. Then he leans close and reads. The marks speak of the Igigi. They speak of 600. They speak of duty that repeats like water, repeats like breath. And they speak quietly of a moment when even the watchers paused, not a riot, not a storm, a stillness, a collective decision to stop moving for a while, the way your body stops fidgeting when it finally feels safe enough to sleep. The scribe's brow softens as he reads. He is not afraid. If anything, he feels a strange compassion. He has known long hours, he has known responsibilities that never end. He understands the tenderness inside the words. He sets the tablet down and returns to the courtyard. Outside, the night has deepened. The air is cooler now, stars look sharper, as if the sky has been polished. The canal's sound reaches him faintly like a lullaby carried on wind. He looks up again, and this time he sees something else. Very far away, so far it could be mistaken for a star near the horizon, there is a small cluster of warm glows, not lightning, not fire in panic, more like distant lamps raised in unison, signals, requests. The scribe watches and his heart slows. In that distant, steady glow, he senses a message that does not threaten order. It asks for balance. If the universe requires constant maintenance, what is the moment of maintenance of itself? Perhaps it looks like this: a night when the caretakers gently place their tools down and say, without anger, we need to breathe. The scribe does what careful humans often do when faced with something larger than themselves. He reaches for a ritual not to control the unknown, but to meet it with steadiness. He pours water into a small bowl and sets it on a stone ledge. The water reflects starlight, trembling slightly, then settling. He whispers a prayer that is mostly gratitude. He thanks the watchers for the years they held the sky. He thanks the rivers for their patience. He thanks the quiet for arriving again. And then he waits. In the distance, the warm glows remain gentle and unwavering. The stars continue their slow turning, but with that faint, tender hesitation. The world does not break. It simply feels as if it has made room for rest. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. And as the scribe stands in the courtyard, listening to the canal's lullaby and watching the horizon's quiet signals, a thought comes to him, soft but clear. Somewhere in the unseen chambers of the divine, a conversation is about to begin. Not a trial, not a punishment, a meeting. Not a quiet council where someone will ask, with surprising gentleness, how do we keep the world running without asking the caretakers to disappear? The lantern glows on the horizon flicker once, like a slow blink. And the scribe turns toward the archive again, knowing there is one more tablet he must find, the one sealed with an old stamp, the one that has not been read aloud in many years. The scribe moves through the archive as if he is walking through sleep itself. Slowly, carefully, mindful not to disturb what has been resting for centuries. The oil lamps are small, their flames sheltered, their light soft enough to keep the shadows kind. Each shelf holds rows of clay tablets the way a shoreline holds stones, patient, quiet, and full of stories you can feel even before you read them. He reaches the place he remembers, a corner where older records sit behind newer ones, where dust lies like a thin veil. His fingers hover for a moment, then choose a tablet wrapped in faded linen. The cloth is dry and surprisingly warm, as if it has been waiting in the dark with its own small heartbeat. There is a seal pressed into the clay, a simple mark, a stamp that once said, "This belongs to the temple, to memory, to order." He lifts the tablet with both hands. It is heavier than it looks grounding. When he carries it to the table, the sound it makes is not a thud, but a soft, rounded note, like setting down a bowl without waking a sleeping child. He sits. And before he reads, he does something that feels almost like prayer. He inhales slowly. He lets his shoulders fall. He lets the muscles in his face soften. Then he places his palms on the table, one on either side of the tablet, as if to offer the story a safe place to speak. You can do the same, in your own way, wherever you are listening. Let the bed hold you. Let your breathing find a longer rhythm. If thoughts return, let them pass like lantern light across water. The scribe begins to read. The signs are older than the others, more angular, more spare, as if the language itself was younger when they were pressed. The story is not told with shouting. It unfolds with the calm certainty of a record: who was assigned, what was tended, how long it lasted, and what happened when fatigue finally needed a voice. The Igigi, it says, were appointed to labor in the spaces between, to tend the invisible paths that keep the sky's order from fraying, to keep watch so the seasons arrive like promises kept. 600 of them, counted, named, arranged like a choir of quiet lanterns. At first, the work is described as steady. Night follows day. The stars keep their roots. Rivers flood and recede in their time. The world feels held. Then comes a line that is almost tender in its simplicity. The labor continued and continued and continued until the word continued begins to feel like a lullaby and a burden at once. A long time, the tablet suggests, not for drama, but for understanding. Endurance is not a moment, it is a landscape. And in that landscape, there is a night when the watchers do something small and immense. They stop, not with violence, not with destruction. The tablet does not celebrate chaos. It describes a work stoppage the way one might describe a quiet snowfall. Everything is still, and because it is still, you notice the world more clearly. The Igigi set down their tools of maintenance. Whatever those tools may have been in myth, perhaps symbols rather than objects. They do not attack the sky. They simply refuse to hold it alone any longer. Their message is the old sigh you have already heard. The toil is too great, the distress too much. If you have ever reached the end of a long day and felt your body speak for you, felt your hands stop, your mind blur, your heart ask for gentleness, then you know what this means. It is not rebellion as spectacle, it is self-preservation as wisdom. The scribe pauses over the next signs because they shift the scene upward. The story leaves the canal banks and enters the quiet chambers of the gods. Picture a high hall where the ceiling is painted dark, dotted with tiny points of gold. The floor is cool stone, the air is still, carrying the faint scent of cedar and smoke from distant lamps. There is no thunder here, only the hush of a meeting about to begin. The Anunnaki gather, those nearer-to-earth gods whose responsibilities touch harvest, soil, and the turning of human life. They arrive like figures in a slow procession, each one carrying a portion of duty. Their faces are calm, not cruel. Their presence feels like gravity, steady, serious, shaping the space without noise. Among them are the ones who think in systems, who understand that order is not a single command, but a balance of many needs. They listen, they consider. They do not rush to punish, because the universe, they know, cannot be held by fear for long. And then, the tablet says, someone asks a question that sounds surprisingly modern. How do we keep the world running without asking the caretakers to vanish? The scribe's eyes soften as he reads it. In that single question, he senses a gentleness that makes the whole myth feel less like a battle and more like healing. There is discussion, quiet, measured. No one raises their voice. Words are placed carefully like stones along a canal bank, each one meant to guide the flow rather than block it. The gods speak of maintenance, of balance, labor shared. And at the center of their council is another question, one you can hold tonight like a smooth pebble. If the universe requires constant maintenance, what is the moment of maintenance of itself? In the story, the answer begins to appear not as an argument, but as a design, a new helper, a new way for the system to carry its own weight. The tablet describes it in images that feel gentle and earthly. Clay gathered from a riverbank at dawn when the mud is cool and pliable, water poured into a shallow basin, hands kneading slowly, folding earth into itself, smoothing it, shaping it with care. No violence, no harshness, just craftsmanship. The gods decide to make a being that can take on part of the work, a being close enough to soil to understand labor and close enough to the sky to understand meaning. The text speaks of essence, a word that can be imagined as warmth, breath, spark. Something shared, not taken by force. A small offering of vitality, placed into clay the way a candle flame is placed into a lantern. The scribe reads, and you can almost feel the scene, the cool mud in palms, the slow press of thumbs shaping a face, the gentle smoothing of shoulders, the careful forming of hands that will one day lift tools, build homes, write stories, hold one another in the dark. And then, the most tender detail, the new being is not made to be disposable. It is made to belong, The gods do not speak of humans as mere instruments. The myth, at least in this softened telling, frames humanity as a bridge between earth and sky, between effort and prayer, between maintenance and meaning. The tablet lingers on small, ordinary details as if it wants to reassure the mind. The first human learns the weight of a basket, the feel of wet earth under bare feet, and the sound of water when it finds a channel and chooses to stay. In the evening, that human looks up and does not fear the sky. They simply stare, wide-eyed, and the staring becomes a kind of prayer. Somewhere above, the watchers notice, not with judgment but with soft relief, as if a rope held for ages has finally been set down. The stars do not move faster, they move kinder. And on the canal bank a breeze slides through reeds, making a hush that sounds like, at last, there is room to rest for everyone, for sky, for the river, and for you, listening now. When the first human opens their eyes, the world does not shake. A breeze passes over the canal. A bird shifts on its branch. The stars continue their slow turning. But something changes in the texture of responsibility. It becomes shared. The Igigi, the tablet suggests, do not disappear. They become what they were always meant to be, watchers of light rather than hands in endless mud. Their role lifts gently, like a lantern raised higher so it can illuminate without burning. Down on earth, the canals keep flowing. Fields begin to green. Villages settle into their rhythms. Work, rest, work, rest. A cycle with room for breath. The scribe sets the tablet down and closes his eyes for a moment. Not because he is overwhelmed, but because he feels in this ancient story a truth that soothes him. Even the cosmos, imagined as strict order, eventually learned to soften. Order that cannot rest becomes pressure. And pressure, when listened to, can become change, not destruction, but adjustment. Not a storm, but a deeper harmony. If tonight's story is touching something tender in you, let it be gentle. You don't have to solve your life tonight. You only have to breathe. Inhale slowly, as if you are drawing in the cool air above a river at dawn. Exhale slowly, as if you are letting worries sink into dark water where they can dissolve. And if this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Outside the temple, the scribe returns to the courtyard. The horizon's distant glows have softened now, as if the watchers have been heard. Above, the stars look steady again, but with a new kindness, as if the sky has learned that even maintenance can include mercy. The scribe lifts his lamp and walks back toward the canal. The water's sound meets him like a familiar lullaby. He watches the reflections, stars trembling then settling, and he feels a quiet certainty. The world will continue, not because someone is forced to hold it, but because the holding has been shared. And as you listen, safe in your own night, you may feel the same certainty arriving in you, slowly, softly, like a blanket pulled up to the heart. The next morning, in the river plain does not arrive with trumpets. It arrives the way mornings usually do, as a slow lightening of the dark, a soft rinse of color across the horizon, and a cool hush that lingers just before the first birds decide to speak. The scribe is already awake, not because he is anxious, but because his body has spent a lifetime rising early for quiet tasks. He steps into the courtyard with his lamp still unlit, letting dawn do the gentle work of illumination. The temple walls are pale, the air smells faintly of wet earth, as if the canals have been breathing all night, and the ground has listened. He walks toward the riverbank, following a path pressed smooth by many feet. The world feels balanced, not because nothing changes, but because change has arrived in a kind way. like a hand adjusting a pillow rather than shaking you awake. At the canal's edge, the water moves with the same steady sound as before, but the scribe senses a difference in himself. He knows a decision has been made somewhere beyond human hearing, not a decree shouted from the sky, but a quiet agreement, a redistribution of weight. He kneels and touches the surface. The water is cool, and the coolness travels into his fingertips, down into the wrist, and up into the arm like a calming message. In its reflection, the last stars fade one by one, but they fade slowly as if each star is allowed to finish its shift before stepping away. If you're listening in a room far from these rivers, you can still take that image with you. Let the last stars fade gently from your mind. Let the day's unfinished tasks fade too. You do not need to carry them into the night. Let them wait in a safe place, the way tablets wait in an archive. Behind the scribe, the temple begins to stir. A door opens with a quiet creak. Sandals brush the ground. Someone coughs once and then goes silent again, respecting the morning's softness. The scribe stays by the water, watching the canal, as if it is an elder speaking in a language older than words. In the story's gentle arc, this is where humanity begins, not as a sudden explosion of civilization, but as small movements that align with the river's calm. A figure appears on the bank, carrying a shallow basket, then another and another. They move slowly, carefully, as if they are learning how to belong to the world rather than conquer it. They scoop clay from the damp edge where the river has laid down its richest silt. They gather reeds for weaving. They lift stones not to build monuments yet, but to reinforce the channel's curve so water can keep flowing without harm. Everything looks ordinary, and that is the miracle. The cosmos has adjusted, and the adjustment expresses itself as normal life. The scribe recognizes this kind of miracle because it is the kind that happens in your life too. When something in you finally shifts, when you stop clenching, when you allow help, when you rest without guilt, the world does not explode. The day simply becomes a little easier to live. Water keeps flowing. Breath keeps arriving. You feel the difference not as fireworks, but as space. He watches a young person kneel and press their palms into the mud. The gesture is slow, almost reverent. The mud holds the shape of the hands for a moment before smoothing itself again. The young person smiles, small, private, then looks up at the sky as if recognizing an old friend. Somewhere above, the watchers are still there. He passes a small group of workers resting in shade beside stacked baskets. They drink water slowly, letting it cool the throat. No one speaks loudly. Even laughter is soft, as if morning has taught them to protect the quiet. One of them traces lines in the dust with a fingertip. Small divisions, little groups, counting in the old way, by 60s, like the turning of a wheel. The scribe watches and feels his mind ease. 60 is a circle you can return to. 600 is 10 circles, a calm architecture for tired minds to lean on. For a moment he tries counting 2, not to calculate, only to soothe. 10 breaths, then another 10 until the thoughts slow and the body remembers its own rhythm. If you like, you can count with him now, softly in your mind, and let each number be a step away from the day's sharp edges. When you reach the end, begin again, gentle as water. In that simple counting, he senses the watchers again, patient, precise and kind, holding the night without strain. The circle closes and peace follows, not as exhausted laborers, but as steady lights. In the softened telling, the Igigi become what they resemble, stars arranged into patterns that guide without demanding. You can imagine them standing in their places, not digging, not straining, simply keeping watch with a gentleness that makes the night feel safer. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. The scribe, standing in the thin sunlight, feels that lantern light inside him. He thinks of the line from the tablet, the question that hovered like a leaf on water. If the universe requires constant maintenance, what is the moment of maintenance of itself? He understands now that maintenance of the universe might look like mercy, a system that learns to breathe, a structure that makes room for pause. The canal teaches the same lesson. If a gate is kept too tight, pressure builds, banks erode, water becomes destructive. But when the gate is adjusted just a little, flow becomes nourishing. It is not less ordered, it is more alive. He begins walking along the canal, and as he walks, he notices small signs of this new balance everywhere. A repaired bank where stones are placed carefully, not hurriedly. A patch of reeds left uncut so birds can nest. A shallow pool where water is allowed to gather, catching sunlight and cooling the air. Even maintenance, the scribe realizes, can be gentle. And then, as if the story wants to bring comfort closer to you, it turns inward. Because the ancient myth is not only about gods and canals, it is about the human heart, the part that wants to hold everything together, the part that believes rest must be earned, the part that fears letting go will cause collapse. If you recognize that part in yourself, you're not alone. Many busy lives, especially modern ones, train the mind to stand guard even at night, to keep watch over tomorrow's meeting, next week's deadline, a loved one's worry, a private ache that hasn't found words yet. But the story whispers something different, something older than productivity. Even the watchers rested. Even the sky made room. Even order adjusted itself so that no one had to carry it all. The scribe stops at a bend where the canal curves like a slow question mark. Here the water makes a slightly deeper sound, a fuller hush. He sits on a stone and lets his hands rest on his knees. For a long moment he does not think. He only listens. A dragonfly lands near the surface and lifts away again. A bird calls once. The sun rises higher, warming the air, but the warmth is still soft. It does not demand. The scribe remembers the old complaint. The toil is too great, the distress too much. And instead of judging it as weakness, he honors it as wisdom. Naming distress is how systems heal. Naming fatigue is how communities stay intact. He thinks too of the new beings shaped from clay and breath. In this telling, they are not created to suffer. They are created to share, to participate in the world's maintenance not as punishment, but as belonging. Work, when shared, can be meaningful. Work, when endless and lonely, becomes distress. This is the story's quiet moral, carried like water. Sustainability requires rest. Fairness requires distribution. Love requires listening. The scribe turns his face toward the light and closes his eyes. He lets the warmth touch his eyelids. He lets the sound of water wash through him. His breath lengthens without effort. And as he breathes, the sky above seems steady again, steady in a new way, less tense. The stars are gone now, hidden in daylight, but he feels them anyway, like friends sleeping in the next room. 600 quiet presences, not burdened, simply present. If tonight you are listening beneath electric lights and city sounds, you can still imagine that. A gentle night shift that does not exhaust itself. A cosmic kindness. The scribe rises and begins to walk back toward the temple. In his mind, he is already composing the words he will press into clay, not as a warning, not as a tale of violence, but as a lesson for anyone who will read it in the future. He will write that order without breath becomes pressure. He will write that maintenance is love, but love must include rest. He will write that the most beautiful systems are the ones that can adjust without breaking. And maybe, if he is brave, he will add one more line for the reader who comes centuries later. Someone like you, listening in the dark after a long day. You are allowed to set your tools down. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to be held. The canal keeps flowing and the world keeps turning, and nothing collapses because you rested. In fact, the world becomes a little more true to its deepest rhythm. And as the scribe enters the cool corridor of the archive again, the light behind him stretches across the floor like a soft ribbon, and the story prepares to lift its gaze back to the stars, back to the watchers now resting in their places, back to the night that will come again, gentle and steady, ready to cover you like a warm, patient blanket. That evening, the heat releases from the river plain the way a long-held thought finally loosens. The air cools by degrees so small you feel them more than you measure them. Shadows lengthen across the mud brick walls. The canal darkens into a ribbon of moving ink, and the last birds settle into their quiet places, folding their wings as if tucking themselves into sleep. The scribe returns to the courtyard with a fresh tablet, still pale from the kiln, still slightly warm in the center. He holds it as gently as you might hold a loaf of bread, careful not to smudge what is not yet written. In his other hand is a reed stylus, trimmed to a point and dipped in water, so it will press cleanly into clay. He sits where the sky is visible. Above him the first stars appear, one, then another, then a soft scattering that seems to widen with every breath. There is comfort in their steadiness. Their positions feel like familiar furniture in a dark room. You can move without fear because you know where everything belongs. If you are listening tonight with tired eyes, let that steadiness reach you too. Let your mind stop scanning for danger. Let it rest inside the shape of the night. The scribe begins to write. He does not begin with drama. He begins with texture, the coolness of the archive, the weight of clay in the hands, the sound of water moving like a patient chant. He writes as if he is laying stones along a canal bank, each sign placed carefully, each line guiding the flow. He records the number that returns like a heartbeat, 600, not as a calculation, but as a gentle structure for memory. 600 watchers, 600 points of care, a shared labor that once held the heavens in place until endurance asked for mercy. He presses the wedges slowly, and the clay accepts them the way night accepts starlight. As he writes, he pauses often to look up. The stars are brighter now, and their light seems less like glare and more like presence. In the softened telling, the Igigi are not only beings, they are also a metaphor for that quiet part of you that tries to keep everything steady. The part that stays awake to protect tomorrow. The part that thinks rest must be earned. The scribe knows that part too. He has lived by schedules and responsibilities, by the quiet demand of keeping records and rituals aligned. Yet tonight, with the story in his hands, he is learning what the council learned. Order without breath becomes pressure, and pressure eventually requires change. He writes the council's question in its smaller, gentler script, as if it deserves tenderness. If the universe requires constant maintenance, what is the moment of maintenance of itself? He leaves a small space after the question, a pause in clay. Then he continues with the answer the myth offered, an answer shaped like clay and breath, like a system adjusting to include rest. He describes hands gathering mud at dawn, water poured in a basin, a spark of essence shared like warmth, passed from one palm to another. He avoids harsh images. He chooses words that feel like linen, soft, clean, calming. Outside the courtyard, the canal keeps moving. Its sound is faint but steady, a reminder that flow does not need to hurry. A gentle white noise that has existed longer than the scribe's worries, longer than yours, and will continue long after both have softened into memory. When the tablet is half filled, he sets the stylus down and walks to the edge of the temple roof. From there, the river plain stretches dark and wide, stitched with faint reflections. The canal is a thin line of shadow. Beyond it, the wilderness begins, and above it, the sky opens like a vast library. He has brought a small star map, nothing elaborate, just a piece of baked clay with marks indicating the rising and setting points of certain stars. In Mesopotamia, such maps were not only tools, they were comfort. They told you the night was predictable. They told you the universe had rhythms you could trust. He holds the map up and compares it to the sky. One star rises exactly where it should. Another follows. The constellation that earlier hesitated now seems to move with a calmer consistency, as if the pause has been integrated, not erased. The scribe feels relief. Not relief that the watchers went back to strain, but relief that the system learned to share. He sits on the roof and lets his legs dangle over the edge. The city behind him is quiet. A dog sighs somewhere in the dark. A lamp flickers in a distant window, then steadies. The world is practicing stillness. If you like, imagine yourself beside him, not in a way that demands attention, but as a companion presence. You can feel the cool night air on your face. You can hear the canal's hush. You can let your breath lengthen without effort. The scribe begins to speak aloud, not loudly, but as if he is reciting a lullaby for the sky. He lets the words drift outward, and he imagines them traveling along invisible canals in the air. In some of the gentler traditions, canals were not only for water. They were thought of as pathways for messages, for prayers, for the slow exchange between worlds. A channel, after all, is simply a promise that flow can find a home. And when you are tired, even your thoughts want a home. Some place to settle, some place to stop circling. So the scribe speaks as if he is guiding flow. He offers his gratitude first, because gratitude softens the edges of fear. He thanks the watchers for their years of attention. He thanks the rivers for their patience. He thanks the clay for holding memory without complaint. And then he thanks the simple fact that tonight, the sky does not require his effort. It simply exists, and that existence is enough. If you want, you can borrow his gratitude for a moment. Thank your bed for supporting you. Thank your lungs for continuing their quiet work. Thank the night for arriving again, steady and familiar. You do not need to force emotion. A small, honest acknowledgement is plenty. Even a single thought, "This is enough for now," can loosen something inside the chest. The scribe watches a faint cloud pass beneath the stars. It moves like a slow ship, unhurried, and it reminds him that not everything must be fixed immediately. Some things simply pass. Some things dissolve on their own. When the cloud clears, the same stars are still there, and nothing has been lost. He smiles, just a little, and his shoulders drop as if someone untied a knot. Below, the canal keeps singing, and he matches it with one more long inhale and one more slower exhale, letting the night do the rest. He names the stars as they appear, not to impress anyone but to soothe. Each name is like a gentle bell, a sound that says, "I recognize you, you are where you belong." For a mind that feels scattered, recognition is calming. For a heart that feels burdened, naming can be a kind of care. He counts softly to 1 through 60, then beginning again. Not to calculate, only to settle. The numbers roll like pebbles in the mouth of the night. In the old base 60 system, counting feels circular. You return again and again to a beginning that is not a failure, but a rhythm. As he counts, his thoughts become quieter. He thinks of the watchers, now imagined as lights that keep their places without strain. He thinks of humans learning the canal's rhythms, working and resting, lifting and lowering, adjusting the gates so water does not press too hard against its banks. He thinks of the council's gentle intelligence, the decision to change not by braking, but by redistributing weight. In the distance, beyond the fields, a faint line of lamps appears. Workers walking home, their flames sheltered by palms. The lights move slowly like fireflies, then disappear behind walls. The scribe watches them and feels the simple beauty of shared life, each person doing what they can, then letting the night hold the rest. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. If tonight's story has been carrying you away from worry, let it carry you a little farther. Let your body grow heavier against the bed. Let your eyelids soften. Let the muscles in your face relax as if they have been given permission to stop performing. The scribe returns to his tablet and finishes the final lines for this section. He writes that the sky can be orderly and still be kind. He writes that rest is not a threat to stability but a requirement for it. He writes that even divine systems learned, eventually, to breathe. Then he sets the tablet aside to dry. He lies back on the roof and looks up one last time. The stars are steady, and the steadiness feels warm, not strict. If you imagine the Igigi as a night shift of gentle lights, you can feel their presence like a protective hush. You do not need to stand watch tonight. You do not need to maintain the universe. The universe, in its oldest stories, has learned how to maintain itself by allowing rest. And as the canal continues its quiet song below, the scribe's breath slows to match it. Inhale, soft as wind through reeds. Exhale, long as water, sliding past stone. The roof cools under him. The night wraps around him. Soon, the story will drift deeper toward the soft discovery that the greatest order is the one that makes room for mercy. But for now, there is only the sky, the water, and the slow, steady feeling of being held. Night returns to the river plain the way a familiar song returns, without effort, without surprise. The sun slips away behind low, distant hills, and the heat that clung to mud and brick loosens into the air. Along the canal, the water darkens, becoming a smooth ribbon that carries reflections like quiet secrets. One lamp appears in a doorway, then another, then a few more, until the village looks like a handful of warm embers scattered on the earth. The scribe walks slowly, letting the evening settle around him. He does not carry the sealed tablet now. He has already returned it to its shelf, wrapped again in linen. What he carries is softer and lighter, the feeling of a system that listened, the relief of a burden shared. His sandals brush the ground with a sound that barely rises above the canal's hush. If you are listening from a busy city, you might imagine this place as a kind of inner refuge, an old landscape where time stretches, where the pace of life is measured by water and wind rather than screens. Let that refuge hold you for a moment. Let the room you are in become quieter in your mind, even if the world outside is still awake. Your breath can be its own small canal, guiding attention back to safety, back to calm. The stars emerge again, one by one, patient as old friends arriving at a door. The scribe looks up and thinks of the Igigi, no longer as strained laborers, but as steady lights that keep their watch without losing themselves. In the softened story, The handoff is not a punishment, not a conquest. It is a rebalancing, like shifting a heavy basket from one arm to both. He reaches a bend where the canal widens, and there he finds a small gathering. 3 workers seated on a low wall, their feet near the water, their faces relaxed in the last light. They are eating slowly bread, dates, perhaps a bit of onion, simple food that tastes like earth and sun. One of them notices the scribe and lifts a hand in greeting. The gesture is unhurried, friendly, enough. The scribe sits with them. No one asks for a speech, no one demands meaning. They simply share the quiet, listening to the water as if it is telling a story on their behalf. For a while, the only sounds are chewing, swallowing, and the canal's endless, steady breath. At last, one worker speaks, voice low. "The sky feels different," he says. Not fearful, not superstitious. Simply observant, the way you might say the air feels cooler after rain. The scribe nods. "It learned to breathe," he answers. The worker considers that, then smiles in a way that looks like relief. "Good," he says, and he takes another bite of bread, as if that single word has settled something deep in his chest. They sit until the first full darkness arrives. When they stand, it is slowly, with careful knees, and they stretch as if honoring the body's limits. The scribe watches them walk away with their small lamp, and he feels a tenderness for ordinary life. In myth, cosmic changes might be grand, but in truth, they show up as small kindnesses, a shared meal, a quieter mind, a night that feels safe. A little farther downstream, the canal passes under a low bridge of packed earth. In the daytime, it is only a practical crossing, but at night, it becomes a small chamber of echo. Water slips through the shadowed opening and returns on the other side with a slightly different voice, deeper and rounder, like a drum heard through cloth. The scribe pauses there, listening, and he imagines that this is what a shift change sounds like in the universe. One set of hands easing away, another set arriving. He watches the surface for a while. Tiny insects skim the water, drawing brief lines that vanish at once. A reed leaf bends and springs back, repeating the same soft gesture again and again, as if practicing patience. Behind him, a pot clinks as someone rinses it, and the sound feels comforting, proof that life can be ordinary and still be sacred. If your mind is still busy, try lending it a simple task. Picture the number 600 as 600 small lights spread across a wide velvet sky. You do not have to see them clearly. Just sense the idea of many points of care, so no single point has to burn too hot. On your next inhale, imagine the lights brightening together, calm and even. On your exhale, imagine them softening together, still present, still steady. Let the rhythm be communal. Let it tell your nervous system that you are not alone tonight. He stays until the last ripple under the bridge smooths out. Then he stands and the night settles around his shoulders like a shawl, and his breath follows it downward. He remains by the canal alone, and the story turns inward again, toward the place where your own life meets the ancient one. Because the gentle handoff is not only about God's assigning labor, it is also about you, the listener who has carried too much without noticing, the person who has maintained everyone else's comfort, everyone else's expectations, until your own breath became shallow and hurried. Tonight, let the old myth offer you a permission slip written in starlight. You may redistribute your weight. You may place some responsibility down. You may allow help to exist, even if you are not sure where it will come from yet. The first step is often not a plan, but a pause. The scribe kneels and lets his fingertips touch the water. He watches the ripples move outward in circles, returning the base 60 feeling of cycles, of completeness. He thinks of the question that keeps floating through the night. If the universe requires constant maintenance, what is the moment of maintenance of itself? And he answers it softly. Not as a philosopher, but as a tired human who has learned something kind. Maintenance of the self is rest, not collapse, not surrender. Rest, the deliberate, compassionate act of letting the nervous system stop standing guard. If you want, you can practice that now in the smallest way. Let your tongue rest, let your shoulders drop, let the muscles around your eyes loosen as if you were watching a distant fire rather than reading fine print. Inhale slowly and imagine the breath moving through you like water through a well-made channel. Exhale slowly and imagine the breath carrying away what you no longer need to hold tonight. Across the canal, a child steps out of a house and looks up at the sky. The child's hair is tousled, their feet are bare. They point toward a cluster of stars and whisper something to an older woman who follows behind them, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. The woman smiles and leans close to listen, then answers with a few quiet words. Perhaps she names the stars, perhaps she tells a small story, perhaps she simply says, "Yes, they are there." The child seems satisfied. They lower their arm and yawn. The yawn is wide and honest, and it reminds the scribe of something important. Fatigue does not need to be hidden. It is not a failure. It is a signal, one that deserves respect. The child goes back inside. The door closes softly. The village returns to its gentle hush. The scribe remains, and he imagines the council again, the Anunnaki in their cool hall, the ceiling painted like night, their voices quiet as they consider the watcher's confession. In this softened telling, no one mocks fatigue. No one calls it weakness. They treat it as information. They treat it as truth. And from that truth, they build a more sustainable world. That is the soft discovery hidden inside the myth. The cosmos, imagined as strict order, becomes more stable when it becomes more compassionate, when it learns that fairness is a form of peace, when it understands that a system that never rests will eventually fracture, but a system that shares its load can endure. If tonight's story is giving you any comfort, you can leave a gentle comment for yourself, just a few words, like placing a small bowl of water on a shrine. You might write, "I'm allowed to rest," or "I'm doing my best," or simply, "Here." Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. The scribe stands and begins to walk back toward the temple, but before he reaches the first courtyard, he stops and turns again to the canal. The water keeps moving, faithful and calm. It does not ask who deserves to drink. It simply flows. And in that flow, he senses the next gentle movement of the story, one that will broaden from canals to constellations, from labor to meaning. Because now that the watchers have been heard, the ancient imagination begins to wonder. If humans were shaped to share the maintenance of the world, what else were they shaped to carry? Not only work, but also song. Not only duty, but also memory. Not only survival, but gratitude. The stars above seem to shimmer as if agreeing, and the scribe lifts his lamp for a moment, letting its small light answer them. The flame is steady. His hand is steady. The night is steady. And as you listen, perhaps you can feel that steadiness in your own chest, like a lantern placed gently inside you, warming the ribs, softening the mind. You don't have to solve tomorrow. You only have to let this moment be enough. In the next part of our journey, we will follow the scribe into the archive once more, not to chase drama, but to find a quieter kind of treasure, a way the ancients used the stars as a calendar of comfort, a map that reminded them when to plant, when to harvest, and when to sleep. A map that, even now, can become a lullaby. Morning in the river plain arrives with a softness that feels almost deliberate, as if the world is practicing kindness. The sky turns from deep blue to a pale wash like watered milk, and the first light slides across rooftops without startling anyone awake. The canal keeps its steady hush, the same ancient white noise that asks nothing and gives everything. In the courtyards, a few birds begin their small, careful songs, single notes, then pauses as if even they respect the quiet. The scribe wakes early again, not from worry but from habit. He steps outside and feels cool air on his face. It carries the scent of damp clay and reeds, a smell that grounds him in the simple truth of earth. He listens to his own breathing for a moment and notices it is slower now, as if his body has learned something from the story he has been holding. He walks toward the canal, as he has for days, and the path feels familiar beneath his sandals. On the bank, water moves with calm certainty, reflecting the sky in long, trembling ribbons. A dragonfly hovers low, then disappears like a thought that decided to rest. And that is when he sees someone new. A figure sits near the water where the mud is firm, where reeds thin out and the bank curves into a gentle shelf. The person is not waiting dramatically. They are simply there, focused, patient, as if their whole morning has been reserved for one quiet task. They are carving something. The scribe approaches slowly, careful not to interrupt the concentration. The person looks up, sees him, and smiles with an ease that feels like familiarity. Not familiarity with him perhaps, but with the world's slower rhythms. In their hands is a small cylinder of stone, dark, smooth, the size of a thumb, a seal. In Mesopotamia, a seal is not just decoration, it is identity, yes, but it is also a promise, a mark pressed into clay to say, this belongs, this was witnessed, this was agreed. A seal is a way of making truth tangible, a way of turning intention into something you can hold. The person carving it appears older than the scribe, though not by much. Their hair is tied back, their sleeves are rolled, and their hands have the quiet strength of someone who works with clay often. Their eyes are steady, not sharp. When they blink, it is slow, as if blinking is another kind of breathing. "Good morning," the scribe says, voice low, respectful. "Good morning," the carver replies. Their voice is soft too, warm in the cool air. They return their attention to the seal, and the scribe watches the careful movements. A tiny tool, scraping a shallow line, a pause, a breath, then another shallow line. The work is so quiet you can almost hear the stone accepting its new shape. "What are you making?" the scribe asks after a long moment. The carver lifts the seal slightly so the morning light catches it. "A vow," they say, "but not the loud kind." The scribe's face softens. He understands immediately what that means. Some vows are shouted, some vows are performed for others, but the most lasting vows, the ones that actually change a life, are often the ones made in stillness for the sake of balance. "A vow for what?" he asks. The carver looks toward the canal. The water glides past, unhurried, like time itself, practicing gentleness. "For keeping things from becoming too heavy," they say. "For remembering to share the weight." The words land quietly in the scribe's chest. They feel like the council's question translated into human language. They feel like the lesson the sky has been whispering. He sits a short distance away, letting the carver continue. He doesn't press for more. The story will come when it is ready. The canal has taught him that forcing flow only makes it harder. After a while, the carver finishes a small portion of the pattern and dips the seal into a shallow bowl of water to rinse stone dust away. Then they reach into a cloth pouch and take out a small lump of clay, soft, damp, pliable. They roll it into a flat oval and press the seal gently along its surface. A pattern appears, not complex, not ornate, just a series of small marks, dots, lines, curves, arranged in a way that is immediately calming to look at. The scribe leans in. The dots are not random, they resemble a cluster of stars, a small gathering, like the Seven, and beneath it, a line that curves like a canal bend. Above the stars, a larger arc, a crescent, perhaps the moon. The whole image feels like a map, sky and water together, held in one quiet stamp. The scribe's breath slows even further. "Where did you learn that pattern?" he asks carefully, as if he is touching something fragile. The carver smiles, and their smile carries a hint of something old, an inheritance. "My family has kept it," they say, "not on tablets in the archive, in hands, in stories told at night." The scribe lets that settle. There is something deeply soothing about knowledge carried not only by institutions, but by families and bedtime voices. A wisdom passed down the way lullabies are passed down. Imperfectly, perhaps, but lovingly. The carver presses the seal again into a second piece of clay, slower this time, as if demonstrating the ritual. When the work becomes too much, they say, we stamp this, we place it near the water, and we remember. Remember what? The scribe asks. The carver looks up at the sky, where a few stars still faintly linger in the brightening dawn, almost invisible. That nothing stays balanced by one person alone, they say. Not a canal, not a household, not a heart. The scribe feels the truth of it like cool water. It makes him think of the Igigi, 600 watchers, tired not because they were weak, but because responsibility had become too concentrated. It makes him think of humans, shaped in myth from clay and essence, made to share the maintenance of the world. And it makes him think of you, listening, perhaps carrying your own invisible roster of tasks. If you are still awake enough to hear it, let this be a gentle offering. You do not have to maintain everything alone. The carver holds out the stamped clay oval. Take it, they say. The scribe hesitates. Why? Because you keep records, the carver answers, and because records are a way of saying, someone saw this, someone cared. He accepts the clay oval with both hands, careful not to smudge the fresh impression. It is cool and soft, and it feels like a small piece of night captured in earth. He studies the pattern again, stars, canal curve, moon arc, a calendar of gentle returning. A reminder that rest is not a break in order, but part of order's design. And the softest twist of all arrives, not as a revelation that shocks, but as one that comforts. The myth of the Watchers is not only carved into official tablets, it has seeped into daily life. It has become a family ritual by the water, a way for ordinary people to honor balance, to prevent their own lives from becoming endless labor. In that moment, the scribe realizes something tender. The great systems, cosmic order, temple schedules, canal maintenance, survive not only because rulers demand it, but because quiet people keep remembering mercy. Because someone, somewhere, chooses to place a small symbol near water and whisper, enough for today. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. Maybe it's a memory of water, a river, a shower after a hard day, rain on a roof. Maybe it's a memory of someone who shared your load without being asked. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. The scribe and the carver sit together in silence for a while. The sun climbs higher. A breeze passes and moves the reeds in a soft, brushing sound like pages turning. In the distance, someone begins sweeping a courtyard, the broom's rhythm slow and steady, another kind of lullaby. The scribe finally asks gently, "What do you call this seal?" The carver considers. "We call it the handoff," they say, "because it reminds us to pass the burden, even if only in our minds, even if only for the night." The scribe nods and he feels emotion rise, not sharp, not overwhelming, just a warmth. In his own life, he has been a watcher too. He has kept track, kept order, kept the night steady for others. And now, thanks to an old myth and a simple family ritual, he is learning how to step back without fear. He turns the stamped clay oval in his hands and notices something else. The canal curve in the seal is not just any curve. It matches a bend near the old bridge, the place where the water's voice deepens, where the echo chamber makes the canal sound like a drum heard through cloth. A location, a quiet instruction. The carver sees his expression and nods as if confirming what he has noticed. "Place it there," they say softly, "at dusk. Not as an offering to frighten the gods, but as a reminder to yourself." The scribe holds the oval a little closer. He feels the damp clay cooling his palms. He feels the simple weight of intention. And because the story is kind, it does not rush us forward. It lets the day unfold slowly. It lets the canal keep singing. It lets the scribe carry the seal back toward the temple like a small lantern of meaning. As he walks, he thinks of a question for you, one that is not meant to wake you, only to comfort the deeper mind. If you could press a gentle seal into the clay of tonight, what would you ask yourself to release? No need to answer now. Let the question float. Let it drift on the canal's hush. At the temple gate, the scribe looks back once. The carver is still by the water, still calm, still carving with patient hands, as if their work is not urgency, but devotion. The morning light wraps the river plain, the sky is steady, and the scribe steps inside, knowing that at dusk he will return to the old bridge. He will place the handoff seal where water deepens and echoes soften. And perhaps, very gently, he will discover something waiting there. Not danger, not drama, something quieter. A hidden tablet tucked in cool shadow, stamped with the same pattern: stars, canal, moon. A message meant not to alarm, but to soothe. The scribe enters the archive again at nightfall, when the temple corridors have cooled and the lamps burn with a steady, sleepy flame. The air inside is still, like the inside of a closed book. Dust rests where it has always rested. Clay tablets sit in their rows, quiet and patient, as if they have been listening to the canal all day and have now settled into the same rhythm. He does not come searching for conflict, he comes searching for comfort. There are records here that speak about kings and taxes and boundary stones, but tonight he avoids those shelves. He walks deeper into the section kept for sky notes, star risings, moon phases, quiet observations that help farmers decide when to plant and when to wait. These tablets are practical, yes, but they are also tender. They turn the heavens into something you can trust, something you can consult the way you might consult a kind elder. He chooses a small tablet and brings it to the table. The clay is smooth, worn in places by many hands. In the lamplight, the marks look like tiny birds' tracks in wet sand. Outside, the canal's hush drifts in through a high vent, faint but constant. The scribe smiles. It feels as if water and starlight are working together tonight, each one reminding the mind to slow. He reads. The tablet lists the first appearance of certain stars at dawn, the way they lift briefly from the horizon before the sun washes them away. The ancients called these moments important, not because they were dramatic, but because they were reliable. A star returns, a season returns, a pattern repeats. And in that repetition, a human heart can relax. The scribe traces one line with his fingertip. It marks a cluster of stars that in later ages will be called the Pleiades. Here, in this older language, it is simply the Seven, a small gathering that rises together like a handful of lanterns. He imagines a farmer waking before sunrise, stepping into cool air, looking east. The field is dark and quiet. The farmer's breath shows faintly. Then, above the horizon, the seven appear for a short moment, tiny lights close together, calm. The farmer nods. The farmer feels the same reassurance you might feel when you see a friend's name appear on your phone at just the right time. It is not magic. It is companionship through pattern. The scribe reads more lines and feels something in his chest soften. The watchers, the Igigi, are not only a myth of labor, they are also a way the mind explained consistency. They are the reason the sky can be read like a calendar, the reason a tired person can believe that tomorrow will arrive in the same gentle order as yesterday. If you've been carrying uncertainty, let the idea of a sky calendar hold you. Not a calendar of deadlines, but a calendar of returning. Nights that come back, mornings that return, breaths that repeat. Each inhale is an arrival. Each exhale is a release. You do not have to force either one. They happen like stars when the time is right. The scribe sets the tablet down and pulls another one closer. This one is larger and has a faint, stamped seal near the edge. It is a diagram of the sky, a simple map. Points for stars, lines for constellations, and notes about when certain patterns rise. He studies it the way you might study a map of a familiar neighborhood. He is not trying to conquer distance, he is trying to feel oriented, because orientation is calming. When the mind knows where it is, it stops scanning for danger. He lifts his eyes to the ceiling, then closes them, and he imagines the constellations in their places, a slow wheel turning. Some patterns are linked to animals, bull, lion, fish, because animals are easy for the mind to hold. Some are linked to tools, plow, yoke, because tools are the human way of meeting the world gently. The sky becomes a mirror of life below, creatures and work, seasons and rest. And then, with the quiet delight of someone finding a familiar stone on a riverbank, he notices the number again, 600. Not written as an instruction, but as a memory of counting. A note about the host of the heavens, the many lights that keep the night from feeling empty. A way of saying the sky is not a void, it is inhabited by steadiness. He thinks of you, though he cannot know you. He thinks of the unseen listener in a distant age, lying in a room with the lights off, trying to settle a busy mind. He imagines that listener looking up at a ceiling, unable to see the stars, yet wanting their presence anyway. So he writes a line into a fresh patch of clay, not as prophecy, but as kindness. Even when you cannot see them, the lights remain. He pauses, letting the words sink. The archive is so quiet that his own breath sounds like water in a small bowl. He listens, and the listening itself becomes a kind of prayer. If the universe requires constant maintenance, what is the moment of maintenance of itself? He considers the question again, and this time the answer feels simpler than before. Maintenance of the self is not always building something new. Sometimes it is returning to a pattern that has always held you. The rhythm of breath, the steadiness of night, the certainty that dawn does not need your supervision. He leaves the archive and climbs to the roof. The sky is clear and the stars are bright, as if someone gently polished the darkness. The canal below reflects a trembling version of that sky, and the two, above and below, seem to agree on one thing: slow is safe. The scribe brings the star map with him and spreads it on the roof tiles. He looks from clay to sky, from sky to clay, and feels a small, tender power in the act. To name a star is to meet it. To map a constellation is to accept that you belong beneath it. For a while, he does not speak at all. He simply watches. A faint breeze moves across the roof and touches his cheeks like cool linen. Somewhere in the city below, a door closes with a soft wooden click. A clay pot settles on a shelf. A lull of silence follows, so complete it feels like the world has paused to listen to itself. The scribe thinks of the watchers again, not as tired laborers now, but as a choir of steady presences. In his mind, each light is a gentle hand placed on the edge of the world, not gripping, only resting there, reminding everything to stay calm. He runs his fingertip along the star map's little marks. Each dot is a promise. Each line is a path. He imagines a traveler far from home, looking up and finding direction without panic. He imagines a mother stepping outside with a restless child and pointing to a bright star, saying, "That one will be here tomorrow too." He imagines an old farmer who cannot sleep, listening to crickets, watching the skies slow turning, and realizing his worry is smaller than the night. If you'd like, take one slow breath with him now. Inhale gently as if the night air is cool water. Hold for a soft beat, not a strain, just a pause. Then exhale, long and easy, as if you were letting the day slide off your shoulders. The scribe smiles at how simple it is. The sky does not demand explanation. It offers pattern, and pattern offers peace. He thinks again of the question he keeps returning to, the one that feels like a lantern in his mind. The maintenance of the universe may be nothing more than this, returning again and again to a rhythm that never harms the one who keeps it. He begins to speak, softly, as if to someone sleeping nearby. He describes the seven rising in the east, their brief appearance before dawn. He describes the way the moon's curve changes night by night, never rushing, never forgetting its path. He describes the steady northern stars that seem to hold the sky in place like a quiet nail holding fabric. And as he speaks, the words become less like information and more like a lullaby, because the mind, especially a tired mind, loves gentle certainty. He offers the listener, who could be you, an image to carry, a calendar, not written on paper, but written in light. A schedule that does not demand productivity, only presence. A reminder that the cosmos has its own way of keeping time, and that you can rest inside it. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. If tonight's story has brought you calm, you can leave a gentle comment for yourself, something small like a star mark on clay. And if you'd like to stay close to this quiet corner of the night, don't forget to subscribe for more peaceful nighttime journeys. The scribe folds the star map away and lies back. His hands rest on his chest. His breath is slow. Above him, the lights keep their places without strain. Below him, the water keeps moving without hurry. Between them, in that middle space where a human body sleeps, the world feels maintained, not by force, but by rhythm. The last thing he does before sleep is count softly, not to measure but to soothe, one breath, another, another. He lets the numbers dissolve before they become heavy. He lets the night do what it has always done, hold him. And in that holding, the story prepares its next gentle step. Tomorrow the scribe will meet someone new by the canal, someone carrying a small carved seal and an old family tale. Not a tale of war, but a tale of a quiet vow to keep the world kind by keeping it balanced. Dusk returns slowly, as if the day is lowering itself onto a pillow. The river plain cools in gentle layers. Warmth leaves the mud brick walls, the stones, the packed earth paths, and rises into the air like a soft, invisible mist. The sky becomes a deepening blue, then a darker ink, and the first star pricks through, small, steady, unconcerned. The scribe waits until the temple courtyard is quiet again. Lamps have been lit in doorways, voices have lowered. The last clink of a bowl has faded into stillness. He wraps the stamped clay oval, the handoff seal, in a strip of linen and slips it into his pouch as carefully as if it were a living thing. He does not feel fear. He feels something closer to reverence, the way you might feel before entering a place that has always been calm. He walks out through the temple gate, down the familiar path, and the canal's sound meets him the way a lullaby meets a child who is already half asleep. Tonight, the water seems darker and smoother, reflecting less of the sky and more of the quiet itself. It slides along its banks with patient certainty, and the reeds whisper as wind combs through them. Somewhere, a frog calls once, then falls silent, as if it remembered the night is meant to be gentle. The scribe carries a small lamp, but he keeps the flame low. He likes the darkness. Darkness, he has learned, is not a lack. It is a soft room for the senses. In the dimness, the canal's hush feels louder, and the stars feel closer, and even his thoughts seem to walk more slowly. As he approaches the old bridge, the air cools another degree. The bridge is simple, packed earth and timber, worn smooth by years of feet and cartwheels. At night, it looks like a small hill crossing the canal. Beneath it, the opening becomes a shadowed arch, and the water's voice deepens as it passes through, turning into a quiet, rounded echo. This is where the carver told him to come. He stands at the edge and listens first. He lets the canal speak. He lets the echo chamber under the bridge hold the sound and release it again and again. It feels like the night itself breathing in that hollow space. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, steady and kind. If you are listening with a restless mind, you might imagine yourself here too. Imagine the cool air on your cheeks. Imagine the water's low, steady tone. Imagine that every echo is a gentle signal to your nervous system. Safe, safe, safe. Let your breath lengthen, as if it wants to match the canal without trying. The scribe kneels where the bank is firm. He takes the handoff seal from his pouch and unwraps it. The stamped pattern is still clear, stars clustered like the seven, a canal curve, and a moon arc above them. The clay is dry now, and it feels smooth under his thumb, like a worry stone made by intention. He places the seal on a flat stone near the bridge's shadow, not as an offering to appease, not as a plea to change the sky, but as a reminder, a small anchor for the mind. He sets it down and rests his hand over it for a moment, as if transferring warmth. Then he waits. The waiting is not dramatic. It is quiet, like watching a kettle that is not yet ready. He listens to the water. He watches the ripples gather and dissolve. He notices how the stars reflect briefly on the moving surface, then break apart and return, as if practicing how to be held gently. A breeze passes and he smells damp earth, reeds, and a faint sweetness from distant date palms. The lamp's flame trembles once, then steadies. The scribe's shoulders loosen, and then he notices something else. In the deepest shadow beneath the bridge where the bank curves inward, there is a shape that does not belong to water or stone. It is small and rectangular, half buried in silt. At first he thinks it is driftwood. Then he sees, by the faint lamp glow, the smoothness of clay. A tablet, not on a shelf, not stamped with a temple seal. Hidden here where water's echo makes a soft chamber, where footsteps above are muted, where the world naturally slows. The scribe's heart does not race. It simply grows quieter, as if it is making room for the discovery. He reaches into the shadow with 2 hands, careful. His fingers find the tablet's edge and slide beneath it. It is cool and heavy. Silt clings to it like a thin coat of sleep. He lifts it and places it on the flat stone beside the handoff seal. In the lamplight, he sees an imprint on the tablet's corner, a small stamp, the same pattern, stars, canal curve, moon arc. He exhales long and soft. The carver's family has kept a record here, in the place where water deepens and echoes round the sound into something soothing. A record not meant for debate, not meant for power, a record meant for the tired. The scribe wipes the tablet gently with linen. The clay is older than the seal he carries, and the edges are worn, as if many hands touched it over time. It has the feeling of a thing taken out only at night, only when needed, only when someone's mind is too full. He tilts it toward the lamp, and the wedge marks catch light and shadow. They are simple, fewer than the temple tablets. The writing is not legal, it is intimate. He begins to read. The first lines describe the canal under the bridge. The writer, whoever they were, knew this place the way you know a favorite chair. They mention the deeper tone of water, the cool air, the feeling of being sheltered by earth above. Then they write about the stars, the way they look steadier when you listen to water. After that, the tablet speaks of the watchers in a way the official records do not. It does not list names, it does not describe hierarchy, it describes sensation, the feeling of being watched over without being watched harshly, the feeling of a night shift that does not judge your rest. The writer says, in a line that feels like a hand on the shoulder, when you cannot keep the sky steady in your mind, let the sky keep you steady. The scribe pauses. He looks up, and the stars are there, quiet, precise, and uncaring of human worry. He feels, suddenly, how often he has tried to keep everything aligned, even inside his chest. He feels the relief of letting that task go. He reads on. The tablet mentions the ancient complaint. The toil is too great, the distress too much, but it frames it not as revolt, but as honesty. It says, even the guardians spoke their fatigue, so you may speak yours softly, without shame. Then, gently, it offers a practice. It says to imagine your responsibilities as stones in a basket. It says to set the basket down beside the canal for one night, not forever, not as abandonment, just as rest. It says the world will still be here in the morning, the water will still flow, the stars will still return. The scribe's breath slows as he reads. He feels the practice like medicine. If tonight you are carrying a basket of stones, deadlines, worries, decisions, memories, imagine setting it down now, just for this hour. You can pick it up later. The night will keep it safe. Your only job is to breathe. The tablet continues with a second soft truth. Order is not the absence of change. It is the ability to adjust without harm. It describes the council of gods in a single calm image, a room with a painted sky ceiling, voices low, tools set down, and a decision made to share weight. And then near the end, the writer addresses the reader directly, as if they have been waiting for you. They write, if the universe requires constant maintenance, what is the moment of maintenance of itself? It is this. A pause, a long exhale, a hand releasing its grip. The scribe feels tears prick lightly, not from sadness, but from relief. He has spent years believing that steadiness means never letting go. Here, under the bridge, in the echo chamber of water, an unknown hand has carved a different definition into clay. Steadiness can include rest. He sets the tablet down beside the seal, and listens to the canal again. The sound is deeper here, round and reassuring. He imagines the 600 watchers not as strained laborers but as gentle points of light, keeping their places without exhaustion. He imagines their gaze as kind, not demanding, and he allows his own shoulders to soften further. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. After a while, he wraps the hidden tablet carefully and places it back in the bridge's shadow, exactly where he found it. Not to hide it from others, but to return it to its home. Some comforts belong in certain places. The echo chamber is part of the message. He leaves the handoff seal on the stone for a moment longer, then lifts it and places it back in his pouch. He stands and looks up at the sky one last time. The stars appear unchanged, but the feeling is different. Less pressure, more permission. If you're still awake, let your eyelids grow heavier now. Let the mattress hold you like mud holds water. Nothing to fix, nothing to prove, only resting gently. As he walks back toward the temple, the canal's voice follows him, steady as breath. And in his mind, the tablet's final line repeats like a lullaby. A pause, a long exhale, a hand releasing its grip. The walk back to the temple feels shorter than it did before, not because the path has changed, but because the scribe is no longer carrying the same tightness inside his chest. The canal keeps its low, steady voice beside him, and with every few steps the water seems to remind him, you can move without gripping, you can keep going without bracing. Above, the stars are steady. Below, the canal is steady. Between them, the scribe is learning a softer kind of steadiness, one that includes a pause, a long exhale, a hand releasing its grip. He reaches the temple gate and steps into the courtyard. The stones beneath his sandals are cool. A lamp burns near a doorway, its flames small and patient. The air smells faintly of incense and clay dust, a scent that always makes him feel as if time itself has slowed down. He does not go directly to the archive. First, he sits on the low wall of the courtyard and rests his hands on his knees. He listens to his own breathing until it becomes as even as the canal. The night is quiet enough that he can hear a far-off dog shift in sleep, a soft scrape of claws, then stillness again. If you are listening and your mind is still hovering near tomorrow, let this be a gentle invitation. For a moment, come back to the simplest thing. Feel your breath in the body. Feel the weight of the blanket. Feel how the room holds you without asking you to earn it. Nothing to solve right now, nothing to fix. Only resting, like water resting inside its banks. At last, the scribe rises and walks into the archive, pushing the wooden door open with care. Inside, the air is cool and dry. The oil lamps make pools of amber light, leaving the corners soft and shadowed. The shelves stand like quiet trees, and the clay tablets are their leaves, still layered, full of stored seasons. He goes to his writing table and sets down his lamp. For a long moment he simply stands there, feeling what it is like to be surrounded by memory. Official records, sacred hymns, lists of offerings, the measured language of order. And yet tonight, the deepest comfort he has felt has come from a tablet that lived under a bridge in the echo chamber of water. He thinks of that hidden tablet, the intimate one, the one that spoke directly to the tired. He thinks of the handoff seal, stars and canal and moon. He thinks of the line that felt like a kind hand on his shoulder. When you cannot keep the sky steady in your mind, let the sky keep you steady. He takes a fresh tablet, soft clay, ready to receive marks, and he begins a new record. Not a record of taxes, not a record of judgments, a record of rest. The stylus presses into the clay with a gentle resistance, and the sound is small, comforting, a quiet click, like a pebble set carefully into place. He writes slowly, letting each wedge be a breath. He writes of the canal's sound and how it steadies the heart. He writes of the watcher's fatigue, not as scandal, but as truth. He writes of the council's decision to share weight and the tenderness of systems that learn to breathe. And then he writes of the hidden tablet under the bridge, without naming the family, without exposing what should remain private. He describes it as a second kind of record, a record kept not for power, but for comfort, a ledger meant for the night. He pauses often to look up, because the archive ceiling is dark and high, and sometimes he imagines the painted sky hall of the gods above it. He imagines voices low, tools set down. He imagines a world maintained by mercy rather than pressure. If the universe requires constant maintenance, what is the moment of maintenance of itself? He answers in clay softly. It is the pause that keeps the system from cracking. When the tablet is half filled, he sets the stylus down and steps outside again. The courtyard is quieter now, the lamps have burned lower. The night feels deeper, heavier, sweeter. He notices someone sitting near the fountain, a young apprentice perhaps, eyes open but unfocused, as if sleep is nearby but not yet arrived. The apprentice looks up when the scribe approaches, and there is a tiredness in that face the scribe recognizes, the tiredness of trying to do everything correctly, of trying not to make mistakes, of trying to hold the world together with small hands. The scribe sits beside them. For a while they do not speak. The fountain's water trickles softly, a smaller cousin of the canal's hush. The apprentice's breathing is shallow at first, then gradually slows as the shared silence becomes permission. Finally, the apprentice whispers, "Does the sky ever get tired?" The question is so gentle the scribe almost smiles. He answers in the same softness. "In the stories," he says, "even the watchers needed rest." The apprentice swallows as if that truth is something they have wanted to hear for a long time. "And what happened?" they ask. "No punishment," the scribe says. "No shouting. The system adjusted." "How?" The scribe considers. He could lecture, but lecture would wake the mind. Instead, he offers an image. "Like a canal gate," he says. "When it is too tight, pressure builds. When it is adjusted, water flows kindly again." The apprentice looks down at their hands. "I keep thinking," they admit, "if I stop, everything will fall apart." The scribe looks at the fountain, the way water keeps moving without asking permission. "The world has been here a long time," he says. "It can hold itself for a while, and you are allowed to be held too." The apprentice's shoulders drop slightly. It is a small movement, but it feels like a beginning. The scribe reaches into his pouch and takes out the handoff seal. He does not give it away. It belongs to the carver's ritual and to the scribe's own learning. But he lets the apprentice see it, the stars and the canal curve and the moon arc. "This is a reminder," he says, "a promise that weight can be shared." The apprentice traces the pattern with a fingertip, careful, as if touching something sacred. "It's beautiful," they whisper. "It's simple," the scribe replies, "and that's why it works." They sit longer, listening to water, letting the night settle. The apprentice's eyelids droop. The scribe watches, and in his chest he feels a warm certainty. The story is already doing what it was meant to do. Not to impress, but to soothe, not to entertain, but to accompany. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. After the apprentice finally slips into a half-sleep, the scribe stands and returns to the archive. He finishes his tablet, adding one more practice for anyone who reads it later. Imagine your worries as stones in a basket. Set the basket by water. Let the stars keep watch for you. He sets the tablet on a shelf, not among royal records, but among the sky notes, where it will be found by someone seeking orientation rather than authority. Then he blows out one lamp, then another, leaving only a single flame near the door. The archive becomes darker, quieter, more like the inside of a closed eyelid. He steps into the courtyard and looks up. The stars are steady. The moon, if it is there, hangs like a gentle curve, not demanding attention, only offering light. He thinks again of the 600 watchers, and he imagines them as a community of lanterns, each one doing a small portion, none burning alone. Before he sleeps, he climbs the temple steps to the roof, moving slowly so the night can stay undisturbed. Up here, the air is cooler, and the city sounds fall away until only two rhythms remain, the canal's distant hush and his own breathing. He lies back on the flat tiles and places one hand over his chest. He chooses a single star, bright, calm, unwavering, and lets his attention rest there. If thoughts arrive, he does not wrestle them. He watches them pass like thin clouds crossing that star, and he waits for the clarity to return. Inhale, and the star remains. Exhale, and the star remains. The body begins to trust that constancy. Then he counts softly in the old circular way, 1 to 60, then back again. Each number is a small step along an inner canal, guiding the mind away from sharp corners. When the counting becomes too faint to hold, he lets it dissolve and he lets silence take over. He remembers the apprentice's question, does the sky ever get tired? And he answers it again, privately. The kind of skill is not endless vigilance, but knowing when to hand off the watch, when to trust the pattern, when to rest inside the larger rhythm. If you are still awake, choose one steady sound in your room, fan, rain, distant traffic. Let it be your canal. Let it carry you. With each gentle exhale, imagine your basket of stones growing lighter until even your thoughts feel like soft sand tonight too. If tonight's story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Something small, like a mark on clay. A single sentence, I am allowed to rest, or simply here. And as your body grows heavier, as your breath grows longer, let the night's order become a comfort instead of a demand. Let the universe, in its quiet maintenance, hold you. Tomorrow, in the final part of our journey, the scribe will return to the canal at the hour when the stars are fading. He will place the handoff seal once more, not as ritual for the gods, but as a ritual for the human heart. And he will offer a final blessing, a way to sleep as if someone kind is keeping watch. Night comes back again, unhurried, as if it knows you are listening. On the river plain, the last heat lifts from the ground and drifts away like a sigh. Lamps glow in doorways, small and steady, and the canal turns into a ribbon of moving darkness. Above it, the sky opens wide and the stars return to their places with the calm precision of old friends arriving on time. The scribe walks down to the water one final time, not because he must, but because he wants to. He carries no burdened tablets now, no urgent messages, only the small handoff seal wrapped in linen and the quiet knowledge that the world can hold itself for a while. He stops at the bend where the canal's voice is deepest, where the reeds lean in to listen, where the night air feels cool on the face like clean fabric. He kneels and places the seal on a flat stone near the bank. The pattern, stars gathered close, a gentle curve of water, a crescent moon, catches the lamplight and seems to glow from within, as if the clay remembers the sky. He rests his palm over it for a moment, and his breath slows. The canal's hush moves through him like a lullaby that does not need words. If you are still awake, let your own breath follow the same simple rhythm. Inhale as if you are drawing in cool air above water. Exhale as if you are letting the day slide off your shoulders. Nothing needs to be forced. The body already knows how to soften when it feels safe. The scribe lifts his eyes to the stars. He does not try to name them all tonight. He simply lets them be. 600 points of quiet care in the old imagining, 600 lanterns that do not burn alone. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. He thinks of the watchers, the Igigi, once tired, once honest enough to confess their fatigue. He thinks of the council that listened. He thinks of the small, compassionate redesign of the world, not a shattering, but a sharing. And he feels the soft truth settle in him like warm water poured into a cold cup. Somewhere behind him, the city is quiet. A door closes gently. A dog sighs in sleep. A faint breeze passes through date palms and the fronds whisper like pages turning. The canal keeps moving, steady as a heartbeat, and the stars keep their patient order overhead. The scribe speaks softly into the night, as if the water can hear him. "Thank you," he says. Not to command the universe, not to bargain with it, only to acknowledge it. Gratitude, he has learned, is a way of relaxing the mind's grip. Then he remembers the question you have carried with us, the one that floated like a leaf on slow water. If the universe requires constant maintenance, what is the moment of maintenance of itself? He lets the question rest, and he answers it without words. He answers it by sitting still. He answers it by allowing the night to hold him. He answers it by letting his shoulders drop and his jaw unclench and his breath lengthen, as if he is saying to the cosmos, "I trust the pattern. I do not need to supervise the stars." If you have been supervising your own life too tightly, if you have been holding your thoughts the way hands hold a heavy basket, this is your invitation to set it down, just for now, just for tonight. The basket will still be there tomorrow, and you will be kinder to it after you rest. The scribe reaches to the canal and lets his fingertips touch the water. Tiny ripples move outward, circles widening in the dark. He watches them until they fade into calm again. He thinks of how a single touch can change the surface and how quickly the surface returns to peace. It comforts him. Change can be gentle, peace can be resilient. He stands slowly and walks along the bank, not far, only enough to find a stone that feels right. He sits, folds his hands loosely and looks up. The stars are brighter now, and the sky feels like a vast, quiet hall, the kind of hall where no one raises their voice. In that hall of darkness and light, he imagines the watchers again, and he imagines them not as exhausted laborers but as calm sentinels, their work now simply to shine. There is no strain in shining. A star does not grit its teeth to be bright. It simply is. And in that is, there is a lesson the tired mind can borrow. You do not have to earn your existence tonight. You do not have to justify resting. You can simply be here, breathing, letting the night pass through you like a cool current. The scribe's eyelids grow heavy. He does not fight the heaviness. He welcomes it. He lets it be the signal that the day's shift is ending. He thinks of the apprentice in the courtyard and the soft fear hidden in that question. Does the sky ever get tired? He wishes he could answer again for anyone who needs it. Yes, even the watchers named their fatigue, and the world did not break. It adjusted. That is the quiet blessing of this story, that honesty can be a form of stability. If tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. Maybe it's a memory of water at night, or a night drive with the windows cracked, or someone's voice that made you feel safe enough to stop thinking for a while. If this story brought you calm, leave a gentle comment for yourself. Something small, like a seal pressed into clay. I am allowed to rest. Or, tonight I hand off the watch. And if you'd like more peaceful journeys like this one, don't forget to subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story. Here, you'll always find quiet histories and soft lanterns for the mind. The scribe returns to the temple only when the night is fully settled. He walks slowly, lamp low, letting the canal's sound fade behind him. At the gate, he pauses and looks back once more. The water is still there, moving in the dark. The sky is still there, steady and wide. The world feels maintained, not by force, but by rhythm. He climbs to the roof and lies down on the cool tiles. Above him, the stars keep their places. Below him, the city is quiet. Between them, his breath becomes the simplest thing in the world. He chooses one star to rest his attention on, and he lets everything else soften around it. Inhale, the star remains. Exhale, the star remains. When thoughts arrive, they do not matter. They are like thin clouds. They pass. The star stays. He begins counting softly in his mind, not to measure, only to soothe. 1 to 10, then back to 1, as many times as needed. Eventually, the numbers dissolve, and only the hush remains. For a while, he listens closely enough to hear how many kinds of silence the night contains. There is the silence between two breaths. There is the silence after a bird settles its wing. There is the deeper silence that appears when the mind stops rehearsing the future. None of them are empty. They are full of permission. He remembers the archive shelves, the cool air, the tablets resting in their rows. He imagines those tablets as sleeping voices, not demanding to be read, content to wait. It comforts him to know that memory can be stored somewhere outside the body. You do not have to carry every detail in your mind tonight. If you find it helpful, picture yourself placing your day onto a quiet shelf. A conversation, a task, a worry, each one becoming a small tablet, cool and solid, resting in a safe place. For now, the shelf is closed, the lamp is low, and the room inside you can cool. Above, the stars keep their slow schedule. Somewhere out there, the watchers are simply lights again, steady and unburdened. And down here in your own life, you can practice the same gentle handoff. Let the night take the first shift. Let the bed take the weight. Let the breath do its simple work without supervision. If you'd like a small ritual to end with, borrow the old circular counting. On a slow inhale, count to 6. On the exhale, count to 6 again, as if you are walking along the canal bank in the dark, step by step, unhurried. Do that a few times and notice how the body begins to believe you. Then if counting feels too sharp, release it. Let the numbers fade like stars at dawn. Let attention widen into something softer than thought. In the distance, a single lamp flickers and steadies. The canal continues its gentle hush. The sky continues its patient turning. Nothing asks you to hurry. Nothing asks you to perform. The only requirement of this moment is to be here, to rest in the quiet order that has always been waiting for you. If you wake later in the night, place one hand on your chest, feel the rise and fall, and remember this simple truth: rest is part of the design, and you are safe tonight. The canal's distant sound becomes a final lullaby, and the scribe lets it carry him. His hands unclench, his face smooths, his body sinks into the roof's cool steadiness, and in the last quiet moment before sleep takes him, He imagines the handoff seal still resting on the stone by the canal, a tiny reminder in clay that the night can keep watch for you. Above it, the stars continue their patient work of shining. Below it, the water continues its patient work of flowing. And here, in this quiet corner of time, you are allowed to do your own patient work too, to rest, to breathe, to let go.
Our story pauses here. Every visual and word you've experienced was assisted by AI, yet guided and perfected by sincere human emotion. We hope this harmony of history and technology has crafted a beautiful dream for you tonight. Let go and drift deep into sleep. Good night.